hearing that message, it's all for something that's very much needed in the air and the environment that we're in right now.
Welcome into another episode of Morning Edition. Julian Sador, Andy Satowski, Jason Harper, Ted Phaeton. I think for the first time in I don't know how long that we've been able to get back-to-back episodes with all four of us together. Yep. And you know what? That I think that's because there's a little bit of peace.
That's right.
In
Bringing
the
this
world.
all together,
Andy?
some harmony, right?
Yeah.
So people are just talking about this group of monks that is making their way across the country. They started in Texas. They're heading to Washington, D.C. They started this trek, some barefoot, we should mention, 2,300 miles to Washington, D.C. They started this back in October, and now they are officially in the Charlotte area. So this is some video of yesterday, in Fort Mill. And they were in Chester County, they were in York County, and basically they just sleep, then they get up in the morning really early, and they just walk. So today they're making their way to the Concord area. They passed through Charlotte. We had live reports all morning long. But this is their walk for peace, and it's very simple. They're just spreading a message of peace, unity, love, acceptance. And they're doing it in a way, guys, that is literally just them walking and handing out little flowers, handing out little bracelets, and that's it. And they also have a dog that you just saw there, a Loca, who has been doing this with them, officially blessed by the monks, has been doing this whole journey. Unfortunately, she is getting care in Lexington for an injury, and she just couldn't walk all of those.
It's a long way.
It's a really long way. And
even for a doggo.
Even for a doggo. So the veterinarians are gonna coordinate with them for ways to meet up with her after she's done healing. But this is really cool. I've never heard of anything like this, guys.
I haven't either.
Yeah,
I think there's like a double fascination. I think the first fascination is most of us don't see monks. I mean, you don't.
Yeah.
So to see one Tibetan monk or any kind of monk, I think is just kind of intriguing. And to see a group of them doing something like this, a demonstration for peace, is just like I kind of want to see that.
Right.
Are they quiet when they pass by? Are they saying chants? Like what? I think there's just a lot of unanswered questions. And so, as you saw from the video, hundreds of people have been following them from Texas all the way to DC, and I think it's cool. I mean, it really is.
Yeah. Folks are lining the streets. I got home from work yesterday, and my wife was already packed up, the baby, and I'm going to go see the monks. So Annie mentioned the bracelets. They are blessing cables, and I actually have one here that my wife got for me. And I think what's happening here is it's so needed right now. It's a time where folks are coming out, and Jess said it was just seeing them, being there, the energy, and just hearing them speak and how eloquently they share their message. Folks want to hear this, and it's a reminder for us to take a pause and just acknowledge not just the physical challenge that they're undergoing, but just the mental and the reason for them to do this. They're echoing across the country with this walk, step by step. And of course, as the folks are coming out to see that and hearing that message, it's all for something that's very much needed in the air and the environment that we're in right now.
You know, I look at the video of all those people with the monks and gathering there, and I would bet that within that group right there, even looking at the one in Fort Mill, you probably have some Democrats, you probably have some Republicans, some Libertarians, and all of them are there for one single cause. And kind of what you were saying, Ted, I think sometimes we forget the things that unite us.
Yeah.
You know, most of us are all Americans, but also I think a lot of us want at the end of the day a peaceful world where we can join and congregate like we're seeing right there in Fort Mill and enjoy one another's company. So, yeah, to your point, Ted, it's a good reminder that, okay, we can all unite around things if we put aside some differences that really shouldn't divide us as much as we let it divide us.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to have the same religion. I mean, you don't even you just mentioned different groups that might be there. Religion may be one that brings someone here, but even if you're not religious at all, again, it's the same common ground of peace. And what does that look like for everyone? And I think we get We rarely stop. Ted, to your point a while ago, we should stop and think about really, truly what is important. What's the one thing I can do, maybe starting in my own family to bring peace. And then you kind of expand that, it's sort of like a ripple effect. Maybe it's to your street or your neighborhood. What are some things I can do? And then obviously this is on a much larger scale, but it doesn't matter. What side of the tracks you're coming from, man, to be able to see this, I hope that when they leave the Charlotte area today, tomorrow, in the next couple of days, that this wasn't just a weekly story and then it's put in our archives and we don't ever talk about it again. My fear is that it probably will. It makes for great video. It makes for great conversation. But too often in this business is we leave it there.
Well, and it's a really nice palate cleanser too. I just love seeing it because to your point, Jason, of us being in the news right now, just over the past couple of years, whenever I see a large group of people like that together, it hasn't always been good. Even if you're gathering to protest something, there's a lot of anger that happens. There's a lot of shouting that happens because that's what protest is, right? You want change. You are loud about it. You can make people uncomfortable, but not be violent, right? That is the definition of a protest. But it's again, just a palate cleanser to see people who aren't asking questions about where you came from, what you believe in, what side of the political aisle that you're on, just to see them kind of being quiet and smiling and taking pictures of these people who literally are just existing and walking.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool.
I do want to share, because when Jess got home, I know, Jason, you love that. What was your favorite part, right? And she left at 10:30, didn't get back till after 2. And she first saw all the cars parked along the side. She decided to park. She missed them by minutes. And then she thought, you know what, let me walk even further, see if I can go to where they're going to stop to eat. That ended up being a 30-minute walk. And then as she waited and they finished eating, they came out and spoke for a while. And the one thing she shared, and it's funny that this is what stuck out to her, she said, the monk was speaking and was talking about the people that you surround yourself with. And if you find yourself looking at all your friends and they're all negative, apparently the monk said, well, then sometimes it's better than just be alone.
Okay. I like that.
That's so
great.
simple, but so true. So I wanted to share that as a secondhand experience from Jess.
I think, as everybody said, it's a good reminder, some good lessons from them. And look, it's free too. As we talk about, the bracelet's free. Going to see them is free. They don't put any stipulations on coming to see them. It's just like, hey, if you want to see us, we're here. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
It is. And you can follow them, by the way. They have a whole website that shows their route. If you're like, wait, are they going to, you can track them and say, hey, are they going to come near me? Can I go out there and just line the route? They do ask that you don't touch them. And then when they do have a logo with
animals.
them, well, when they have a logo with them, to not bring your dogs.
Yes. Yes.
They don't have her with them right now, but just some little things. Just again, come, be respectful, take pictures, take videos, smile, accept the gifts if they give them out to you. But you can follow it. They have a whole Facebook page and a website,
and it is free. But they do have an area to donate if you want to give an offering, as well as look at the live map to track them and see where they're going to be going. So
I do quickly. I feel like there was a missed marketing opportunity. I mean, they are stopping today in Concord. Yeah, like just one pass around the Speedway track. I mean, it might have taken a while. It might have taken a while, but just one peaceful lap. It would have been the quietest lap around the track.
I was going to say
slowest lap ever at Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Maybe there's still an opportunity.
Oh man! All right. Well,
call somebody.
Speaking of peace and trying to find a way to transition, there are a bunch of protesters and protests going on in Iran right now as people search for peace, search for clarity, search for a better situation for their livelihoods. We're going to be talking with a political professor from UNC Chapel Hill coming up on the other side of this break. You're watching Morning Edition, and we'll be right back. Welcome back into Morning Edition. We have Dr. Navin Bapit joining us from UNC, talking about what's going on in Iran. Dr. Bapit, we had you on the show earlier this morning, but we wanted to bring in for a more detailed discussion and kind of start where you did this morning. Can you set the scene? How did we get to where we are about 2 weeks ago with Iran? What's the current situation? How did we get there?
We can start way at the beginning if you want, but if we talk about if we start, Iran has had a long relationship with both the United States and the United Kingdom, primarily at first the United Kingdom as an oil supplier, and in the 1950s, there was an effort to try to establish what would be more of a democracy in Iran. That was then the United States and the Eisenhower administration in particular staged a coup or supported a coup that installed an individual who was the Shah of Iran to rule Iran, and he did for several decades. And he was cooperative. Again, the main interest that the United States had in Iran was oil and regional stability. Unfortunately, the Shah of Iran also was seen by many as being more progressive, but as many by others as being more of a repressive individual. And this, along with some of the falling oil prices in the 1970s, after it increased during the oil embargo and subsequently fell, this led to the Iranian Revolution, which deposed the Shah, who then fled to the United States and created the current revolutionary regime in Iran. And this regime was a theocratic regime. Its intention was to try to overthrow what it believed to be were the imperialist designs of the Middle East and the states in the Middle East, and encourage Shia revolutions in several areas throughout the Middle East. So that put it into conflict with the United States, who has sort of a decree that it would protect the allies that it had in the Middle East, again, for the purposes of making sure that that oil reached the international market. And so this led to several conflicts between the United States and Iran. During the 90s, they kind of tapered down, but then after the war on terror started and the United States invaded Iraq and also had Afghanistan on the other side, Iran was surrounded, and this created considerable fear in Iran that the United States was targeting them next. So Iran started a large campaign against the United States and Iraq. And so this has led to this sort of long rivalry between the United States and Iran. Recently, Iran has been under significant sanctions since 2010. It's caused very severe damage to Iran's economy, which is now culminating today. And you couple that with Iran's losses throughout the region. They lost their ally in Syria. Hezbollah also got destroyed. So Iran is sort of on its back foot right now in its rivalry with the United States. And it doesn't look like that's going to improve anytime soon.
First of all, what a great recap of decades of history in Iran in under 3 minutes. I wish my history teacher in college had been like that. Okay, so here we are today. What is our responsibility as the most powerful country in the world when we see unrest going on like this? One, is it to protect our assets? Is it to protect the oil? Is it the president flexing muscles saying, hey, no, we're going to jump in here because we don't want any more killings? What is the responsibility of the United States in something like this?
I think that depends. That's a great question. I think it depends on who you ask and who's actually believing what the responsibilities of any state are in international relations. If we follow sort of the idea that was enshrined in the UN, in some ways it's contradictory. The UN establishes that states are sovereign, meaning what happens in their territory is their responsibility. So if you follow that, the United States has no responsibility here. If you follow that, another part of the UN, which is humans and individuals are responsible and there are human rights that individuals cannot lose, then there seems to be an international responsibility to protect life in Iran. And if you follow an economic argument, then the United States has to make sure that, and primarily, the Strait of Hormuz remains unimpeded and that oil reaches the international market. So it really depends on which one you go with. My guess is that when it comes to U.S. foreign policy, there typically is a mix of these things. When it comes to the Trump administration, I think what we would be looking at is the sovereignty argument doesn't seem to be as important to the Trump administration, say for other states. In the case of Iran, the Trump administration has voiced support for the protesters and in fact encouraged them. And I think the Trump administration would be also concerned about oil in the Strait of Hormuz. So again, I would say the Trump administration probably is not in this particular area going to lean very much on the sovereignty argument that whatever happens in Iran stays in Iran. They look like they do want to shape some events here and maybe exploit some of Iran's current weakness.
Dr. Bape, excuse me, we know that these protests have been deadly, obviously protesting a government or a ruling body that they don't agree with, saying it's corrupt. You mentioned briefly there that the economy is in a free fall and has been since the end of December there. Jason touched on it briefly, but what right does the U.S. or where is our position in protecting these protesters? Do we have any standing to do that? Because again, people are being killed in the thousands, and we don't even know if that number is accurate because we can't really trust the information coming out of Iran because they have blacked out the internet. So we don't really know.
Yes. So again, if we look at it from the responsibility perspective, what typically would have to happen, I think, is that this would have to go through the United Nations. That's again based on the UN Charter. That seems to be where the responsibility lies, and then states like the United States, because the United States has unique capabilities in the world, those states would be responsible for trying to create something that would protect individuals. And that could not just necessarily be a military intervention. That could be attempted mediation. That could be attempt to try to resolve some of the problems in Iran, or try to facilitate some form of a peaceful settlement between Iran and its protesters. So that could be one way to look at it. But if we take a step back and think about the United States role, the United Nations P5, including the United States, did impose sanctions on Iran that were quite severe in 2010, which is a contributor to many of the current issues that Iran has. So I think from the Iranian perspective, the United States does not look like a credible partner or anyone that can credibly protect the interests of the Iranian people, or look like they would. So it's a bit more complex, right? Again, the United States, I would say, definitely has an interest in trying to make sure that Iranians are free from harm. The Iranian regime would likely respond by saying the United States is the reason why its people face harm.
All right, Nathan, we want to squeeze in a quick break here on Morning Edition, but when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with you on the situation in Iran. We'll be right back. Welcome back into Morning Edition. We're continuing our conversation with Dr. Naven Bobbitt from UNC Chapel Hill, talking about the situation in Iran. Dr. Bobbitt, I do want to ask for people in Iran, because I think a lot of times Americans, we get comfortable in our own world, what's going on here, and sometimes we lose scope of what people in other countries may be feeling. For people in Iran, what are their motivations? What are they seeking to happen? You kind of touched on it earlier on with, how the Islamic Revolution happened, but where are they now? What are they looking for in their country, and what are they protesting to try to achieve?
Yes, that's a great question. So I think if we look at Iran, one of the things to think about is that since 1979, there was a promise that life would be better to some extent, right? And I don't think that that's been realized, right? So today, as I mentioned in the original broadcast, the exchange rate between U.S. dollars and the Iranian currency is 1 to 40,000, right? So it looks like the currency doesn't really do a whole lot. The ability of Iranians to actually have a life, which is once they sort of graduate from their educational institutions, to be able to go into the economy and build a life for themselves where they're able to generate some wealth, that really isn't there to the extent that I think there would be an expectation that it would be. And then you also add Iran has water shortages amongst other issues. So it looks like the quality of life has significantly deteriorated, which I think was the source for several of these protests to start. But then it came to a larger issue, which is that the revolution of 1979 and the Ayatollah and the regime has not delivered on its promise to make Iran better, or make the lives of Iranians better. As sort of the expectation was. So I think this is a general indictment of the regime and their inability to, in a sense, use what is a very valuable resource in oil to try to improve the lives of their people, and also to try to expand the ability of people to have upward mobility in the society. So again, a lot of it does fall as a criticism, indictment, and anger towards the regime that won't go away even if these protests fizzle out.
Naven, you've got the Supreme Leader's health who is in question right now. There's not a clear successor on who could be waiting in the wings. We've got possible military force on the table coming from the United States with President Trump. As a professor of war and peace, what are you telling your students? What do you see, in your opinion, what are the steps to peace in Iran?
Well, again, that's one thing when we look at general protests like this, they don't typically succeed. And so most of the time when we look at it, we would expect the government to eventually make it through this. I will say when we look at the government right now, there are some significant weaknesses that we can see. We can see that the internet blackout happened. Countries don't have to do that if things are totally under control, right? They engage in these behaviors because they are concerned. And what you also see again is that there's a large protest and large killing of civilians. Again, killing of civilians means that a state like Iran is killing its own assets, right? People are individuals that produce goods and services for their society. And by killing them, you're only harming yourself, which suggests that the government is vulnerable. So I think there are some signs of vulnerability, but if we look a little bit more closely, what we can see is that none of the military units in Iran have defected yet. The Iran Revolutionary Guard Council is actually quite committed to the regime, and they're sort of very loyal. So a lot of the regime's military and security apparatus remain intact, even though it looks like from the economic perspective, from the social perspective, they really are teetering. I think they'll make it through. My expectation is that if they do, you will see another thing like this happen again, unless they can address some of these real systemic issues that they have in their country.
And Dr. Boppet, really quickly before we let you go, what do you see happening in the immediate days and weeks? Where do we go from here?
I think so. We'll have to sort of wait and see. The sort of wild card we can look at is what the United States does. The United States has considerable assets in theater. It can engage in a strike in Iran if it chose to. If it were to engage in an actual ground invasion of Iran, that would take a large buildup of assets that the United States has, which would be noticeable. So we haven't seen that yet. But if the United States wanted to stage any sort of airstrikes or anything like that, that would be fairly straightforward. The United States can do something like that. What the sort of end to that is, that's the question, because it's not clear right now if the United States were to engage in any sort of support for the protesters, if the protesters share any affinity for the United States, any of the agenda of the United States, that's not clear at all. Right? So you could potentially be aiding those that are hostile to the United States, because there's no clear leadership of the opposition right now, which is one of the reasons why the regime may survive. So I think we're in a lot of flux. The key thing I think to watch is what Iran's military does. If you start to see a lot of defections, then that looks like Iran may be in some considerable trouble.
Again, Dr. Navin Bobbitt joining us from UNC Chapel Hill. Dr. Bobbitt, thank you for breaking that down for us, for making us smarter, and to making it more understandable. We appreciate you joining us as always.
Thank you so much.
A great conversation with Dr. Navin Bobbitt with UNC Chapel Hill. And that does it for all of us here at Queen City News for Morning Edition. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.